Good morning, friends. Welcome to today's reading from Love Stories and Wars. Chapter 5, A Crazy Plan. The morning after Bonson's return, the same group as the night before reconvened in Hellel's tent. Hellel had seen to it that a buffet-style breakfast was set on a table for anyone who might be hungry. Prior was the last to arrive, but he was not late. No one but Prior seemed inclined to eat, but he served himself a heaping plate of bacon, eggs, and fried potatoes, and sat down in a circle with the rest, waiting for Bonson to speak. Once Prior was settled, Bonson began. I know it has been a long night of anticipation, and I don't want to keep you waiting any longer than necessary, so I am going to get right to the point. What I am going to say will sound a bit crazy, but I need you all to listen until I am finished laying out the basics. Then we can discuss it. Just remember that Alva left me in charge of the army, and my mind is made up. Hellel could not help smiling because this little speech reminded him of Tyagon's introductory speech right before he abdicated. Prior and Diaron nodded. Hope and Nira sat motionless as Pinsor fidgeted uncomfortably. Dachmann has captured Alva, Bonson continued. Hope says he is still alive, and I believe her, but we don't know how long he has. I am not the man Alva is, and do not feel qualified to lead the army in his stead. So Lady Hope, Prior, and I are going to get him. There were some gasps and muffled whispers, which Bonson allowed to subside as this statement sunk in. Pinsor looked at him with great suspicion. A few of you know the information I am about to share, and some of you do not, but I think it is time to tell you. There is a secret way into Hurin, a tunnel through the mountains. The Denays secretly oversaw its construction for generations, anticipating a conflict with Hurin. Just like they did with the chasm on the Camden slopes. Alva's father was saving its use for the right time, but Philon III accepted Diaphon's peace deal beforehand. The idea was to wait for a time when it seemed least expected, then bring an army through the tunnel man by man, take the Hurin capital, and launch a rear attack on the enemy troops. Alva had the same plan for Dachmann, but was waiting for what seemed to him to be the right time. He spent many hours explaining the plan to me, but the fact is, it is an operation that would take more preparation time than we have. So Hope, Prior, and I are going to enter Hurin through the tunnel and try to rescue Alva. You're right, Diaron said. That is a crazy plan. Pinsor looked angry and suspicious. I'm not quite finished, brother, Bonson said. My apologies, Diaron said. Obviously, Bonson continued, there is great chance in this plan. Plans must be in place in the event that we do not succeed. Pinsor, I will leave you in charge of the army. You can rearrange as you choose to make up for Prior in my absence. There will be many details to discuss, of course, but I can see that you all have many things to say, so let's get that done with. Time is pressing. The three of us need to set off today. All the room was calm and quiet, as they were chewing over what Bonson had said. After a moment, Hellel asked, which of us should speak first? You are always the Supreme Counselor, Lord Hellel. Why don't you speak first? Diaron said. let us look at this as reasonably as we may, Hillel said. Your plan involves taking two of our best leaders and our best defense, namely hope, away at a critical time. The critical time, as I see it, is that Alva is alive and held prisoner, Bonson replied. Other than that, we are in a stalemate. We will tell no one outside this tent of the plan, and the mission should not take more than a week, give or take. Dachmon's fresh attack could not be ready before then. Yes, but if your quest should fail, as it almost certainly will. Alva always said victory did not depend on him. If it did not, then it certainly does not depend on Bonson or Prior the Mighty. But it does depend on hope, Dioran interjected. We can't stand against the Dachmanim without her. Beyond that, Hillel said, there's the issue of the mission itself. Alva is probably being held in the Krondon dungeon, underneath the palace. Very few know of its existence, but to break him out, you would need to storm the strongest palace known to man. I'm not sure even the three of you can take on the entire Dachmanim guard. I'm sure we cannot, Bonson said. The key is not force, but stealth. I have been to the Krondon Palace several times. I know my way around, and I have even been to the dungeon on a tour. Certainly there will be some fighting to do, next to break on the sly and such, but Prior and I are up to that. Prior is hardly the man for stealth, Hillel said, not to mention the difficulty of hiding your own impressive frame. Prior and I can be as stealthy as we need to, Bonson said. And we aren't going to enter the city by day and simply stroll through. Well, Dioran said, perhaps before we work through all the difficulties of the plan, we should hear what your proposed companions have to say. It sounds crazy to me, said Prior, but I swore my life to serve Alva, and my friend here is Alva's chosen successor, so I'll do whatever he commands. I ain't never been afraid of dying, and if I die along with these two trying to save our master, I can't think of a better way to go. Once Prior had spoken, everyone turned to Hope. For me, she said, it comes down to this. They have my husband, and I'm going to get him whether anyone comes with me or not. I'm thankful that Lord Bonson has saved me the difficulty of defying his orders. You're willing to put the entire kingdom, the entire world, in jeopardy for this? Hillel asked. Do you truly not see the selfishness of that? My lord, Hope replied, if you define selfishness as being willing to lay down my own life for the man I love, we have a very different understanding of the word. Hope, Hillel said sternly, you know full well why I say it is selfish. You've never been one for rhetorical maneuvers, and now is a poor time to begin. Never before had Hillel spoken to Hope in this tone, but her response came immediately. Lord Hillel, when I was your ward, I defied you only once. You know the time and the result. But now I am not your ward. I am the wife of Alva Dene, so my current lord is not here to be defied. She paused for a moment, then continued, growing in volume as she spoke. You hold the people of Lassania over my head as leverage to pressure me to let the Dachmanon do whatever he wants with my husband? Then in response, I say... Her voice now began to shake. that you have been engaging in rhetorical maneuvers for years, and now is a very good time to stop. Hela was speechless. Hope had never spoken in wrath like this, and the content of her rebuff was such that any further reasoning on his part would seem to prove her point, and also provoke further wrath. Had he been wrong? It looked like there were no rhetorical maneuvers on her part. This was pure honesty, however misguided he may find it. He gave an imploring look at Nibra. "My lord," Nibra said, "unlike Hope, I have never defied you, however much I've disagreed. But consider this. The first time Hope delivered us, it was to save Alva, and every time since, Alva was involved. It was Alva who caused Hope's power to mature, and we don't even know if Hope can deliver us if Alva is not here with her. Perhaps the safest thing to do for the people is to let them try to save Alva. However that may be, Hope is who she is, and cannot be who she is not. She is just like her husband in that regard. But it is they who have carried us this far. However impractical their approach to war seemed. I know this makes little sense, but how often have Alva Dene's methods ever made sense? We have not come this far by choosing the reasonable path. If we were going to do that, we should have surrendered before the war began." "Perhaps," Hela said, "but I believe Alva would disapprove of this plan." "He would," Bonson agreed, "but that is because he would want to sacrifice himself. However, if I were captured, I am certain he would have come after me personally. And the fact is, he is not here. I am, and he left me in charge." "We haven't heard from Pensor," Diron said. "Bonson suggests leaving you in charge of the army. What do you think about all of this?" "The thing that bothers me," Pensor said slowly, "is the two of you going off together." He motioned toward Bonson and Hope, who both seemed quite surprised. "Pensor," Hope said, "if that is what worries you, you really don't know me at all." "It ain't you that I'm worried about," he replied with a look at Bonson. "Pensor," Bonson replied, "I believe I have been very patient with you, but my patience wears thin." "Does it?" Pensor asked. "It does. Whatever happened in the past, things have changed. I'm a newly married man with a child on the way. Alva Dene is my best friend, and he and Hope have a son. You insult all of us with your implication." "Are you going to demand satisfaction?" Pensor asked sarcastically. "I would," Bonson said, "but I need you to lead the army." "Pensor is being unjust," Hela said, "but that does not make this plan any less foolish. Nibra, you say that we do not know if Hope can counteract the dark power if Alva is not with her. I believe she can, but however that may be, we know with certainty that our men cannot fight an army led by Matarin and his Dakhmanim without her. This quest is almost certain to fail, and yes, we have many mighty men. We might be able to win without Bonson and Prior, but what are we to do without Hope?" "Bring my son to the battle," Hope said. "Let Balsasander hold him, standing on my platform behind the army. Then see what happens." You are suggesting that we bring a baby to battle? Hellel asked. No, Hope replied. I'm suggesting that you bring a Danae to battle. Pensor mused. Pensor? Hellel asked. Well, he said thoughtfully, now she's starting to make sense. Really? Diron asked. Diaphon didn't win a military victory, Pensor said. Phylon made a peace deal under Al-Salah's nose. A fact well known to us, Pensor, Hellel said. Help us see its relevance. An army has never been defeated when a man named Danae was with it. But Al-Salah Danae the 28th is not a man. He is a baby. A man baby, Pensor said. He's got both Mancher and Divon's blood in him, and he's a luminary. Hope said he helped us win the last battle. I think that should she die, he might have the power to hold off the Dachmanim. If he could do that, I could probably hold the pass until he was old enough to lead the army. Say, 12 or so. You are serious, my friend? Diron asked. You really think we should ride everything on a baby? Lord Hellel rode everything on a baby 19 years ago, Pensor replied. The circumstances were quite different, Hellel said. The circumstances are always different, Pensor said. This is a very strange change of tune, Hellel said. If you ask me, said Pensor, Alva left a plan and we should follow it. But Hope says she's going, and I don't think we can stop her. Bonson says he's going, and I swore to serve him. And Alva left him in charge of the army, so he can make that decision if he wants to. I don't like the idea of Alva in the hands of Dachmon any better than they do. It seems impossible for them to succeed, but this entire war was impossible from the beginning. And how often have we seen Hope do the impossible? If they don't make it, at least little Al-Salah gives us something to put our hope in. This seems very foolish to me, Hellel said. I understand, Lord Hellel, Hope said, but there have been many times when your plans seemed foolish, yet we submitted to them, and, against all odds, we have come this far. I can't give you a reason that makes sense. I just know this is what I have to do. All my life, Nira has been telling me we must trust Hellel. Now I'm asking you to trust me. I will trust you, Hellel said with a slight smile. Chapter 6, In the Dungeon. Soon after Brochen died, a new group of soldiers came out of the side door of the Krondon Palace to remove Alva to his dungeon. They were led by one of the Dachmanim, and they were more afraid of him than any potential fear of Alva. 4 men came inside the steel cage and picked him up from 4 sides to carry him to his destination. Alva was carried into a hallway, along the sides of which were several shining suits of armor. They carried him around many corners, which he noted carefully. Eventually, they stopped at a door in the hall and opened it. Inside, it looked dark compared to the torchlit hall, but looking at the bottom of the doorway, Alva could see it was a staircase. The stair was narrow, so 2 of the men carrying Alva had to step aside and let the other 2 carry him down from each end. Alva made no struggle. His hands and feet were still shackled together, and freeing himself so that he could roll down the stairs had no appeal. Alva knew that, for now, he was wanted alive, so he thought it was a time to wait. As the men carried Alva down the long staircase, He could feel the coolness around him as they were going deep underground. When they finally reached the bottom, there was a room that was roughly 20 paces by 10 paces. There were 10 soldiers in this small room. 8 of them were sitting at tables playing cards, chess, and other games. 2 of them guarded a small wooden door. The men took Alva through the door. Inside it seemed completely dark except for the torch one soldier carried. In the shadows from the torchlight, Alva could see that the room had a dirt floor. It was bare except for 2 pillars and a large fireplace with a locked grate. There was no fire and the room was very cold. Also, he could see that 2 shadowy figures stood against the wall to his right as they brought him in the door. One was his own size and the other very tall and lean. The soldiers carried Alva to the pillar near the far wall closest to the fireplace. There were 2 iron rings attached to the pillar, one higher than Alva's head and the other near the bottom. "Chain him," the Dark Warrior said. The soldiers removed the chain connecting his wrist and ankle shackles and put him against the pillar, and chained his wrists to the ring above his head and his feet to the ring below. When they had chained him, some other men came in with bundles of wood. They unlocked the metal grate on the fireplace and pulled it open with a creak. They made a healthy fire, then closed the grate and locked it again. They had left a poker inside with the tip in the center of the flames. Alva smiled to himself, having a very good idea of what the poker was for. Once the fire was ablaze, the soldiers left the dungeon and Alva was left alone with the 2 occupants. The 2 men stepped forward. Both had hair and beards that had clearly not been cut, trimmed, or washed in several months. They wore rags that hung off their emaciated frames. Alva looked at the smaller man. He had black hair streaked with gray and gray eyes that were wise and sad. "Your Majesty," Alva said, "forgive me for not bowing, but my hands are shackled." "Phylon is your king," the man said. "Phylon has my oath and my sword," Alva replied, "but Tyagon the True will always have my heart. My father is turning over in his grave, but I'm sure he would understand if he knew everything." Tyagon bowed low in reception of this honor. Alva then turned to the taller man. He had sandy hair streaked with gray and light blue eyes. He had strong and handsome features, but they were obscured by the jowls of skin hanging off his once fat face. Skin also hung loosely from the sharp points on his large frame. "My lord," Alva said, "I am glad to see you. Your son still does you great credit." The large man's body convulsed as he began to sob. "My son yet lives?" "I believe so," Alva said. "He was with me when I was captured. A man named Sverian of Aknon stayed behind to kill him, but Sverian never caught up with my captors. I'm almost certain that somehow Bonson killed Sverian and got away. If anyone could do it, he could. I commanded him to go back to Lassania and lead them to victory. I have absolute confidence that he will do just that." "He has served you well, then?" Ben-El asked. "Have you heard nothing of his exploits?" Alva asked in return. "Nothing." "Well, he was the hero of our first battle with Dachmon. It was his victory more than anyone else's. Since then, he has been a major factor in every other victory. He leads the men honorably and fearlessly. He and I, side by side, fought through a field of enemies to slay Brach, the famous Dachmonian general. War stories often turn to exaggeration, but I swear that this is the literal truth. Ben-El nodded. I should also tell you, Alva continued, that he has taken a wife, and they are expecting a child very soon. Whose daughter? Ben-El asked. A tavern owner named Sal in Bracia. A commoner, then? Yes. Does that bother you? Ben-El put down his head as tears began to flow afresh. My son may do as he wishes, he said. You have not forgiven him, then? Alva asked. You misunderstand me, Ben-El said, raising his tear-stained eyes and looking into Alva's. I would give all that I have ever owned, all that I have ever been, every memory of honor and acclaim. I would give all of that up, just to look at my son's face one more time, and to tell him that he was right, and that I'm proud of him, and that I love him. Then Ben-El's body shook with a fresh tremor as he rushed forward and put his hands on Alva's shoulders. My Lord Danae, he said, you have a gift for survival. Somehow you always live through the most difficult situations. If by some miracle you live through this, you must tell him for me. Alva began to speak, but at that moment the door opened and none other than Prince Matarin himself walked in. He was accompanied by one of the Dachmanim and 2 soldiers. In his presence, Tyagan and Ben-El shrunk back against the far wall. The prince walked over and stood before Alva, looking him in the eye. Lord Danae, he said in greeting. Kinar, Alva said, deliberately using his former alias. Matarin motioned with his head, and a soldier unlocked the grate of the fireplace and opened it. He took out the poker and handed it to the prince. The end was glowing bright orange. The prince smiled at Alva, and Alva gave him a calm, cocky look. On his lips were a slight, mocking smile. Matarin held the red-hot poker up near Alva's right cheek. Alva's head did not move away, and his face did not change. Slowly, Matarin placed the poker against Alva's cheek. There was a sizzling sound, and a smell of burning flesh began to fill the dungeon. But if Alva felt the poker at all, he showed no sign of it. He just continued to stare into Matarin's eyes. If there was any change, his look turned from haughtiness to boredom. He looked as though he might yawn at any moment. After about 10 seconds, which seemed like an eternity to Tyagan and Ben-El, Matarin withdrew the poker. Do you think next time you could get my eyes? Alva asked. And why would you want me to do that? Matarin asked. Because it would spare me the unspeakable torture of ever having to look at you again. Matarin laughed loudly. You don't disappoint, Danae, he said. We try, Alva replied. The question is, what are we going to do with you? Matarin asked. Do you want my advice? Alva asked. Yes, please. I would kill me immediately. Ah, you want to avoid a slow, painful death, is that it? No, Alva said. I'm not that stupid. By all means, get your tools, take your time and have your fun, but start immediately. And why the hurry? Because as long as I'm alive, I'm a threat to you, Alva said. I'll take it under advisement, Matarin said. I'm going to discuss the matter with my father, and I will tell him your advice. With that, Matarin snapped his fingers and left the room. The soldiers relocked the fire grate. One of them smeared a green ooze on the burn mark on Alva's cheek. It was very painful, but Alva knew it would fight infection. Then the soldiers followed Matarin and locked the door behind them. When they had left, Tyagon and Ben-El came out of the shadows against the other wall. "Did that hurt you?" Ben-El asked. "Lord Ben-El," Alva replied, "has anyone ever held a red-hot iron against your cheek?" "No." "Then you'll have to take my word for it. It really, really, really hurts." "How did you keep from crying out?" "I'm the son of Al-Saladinay. And now to business. You boys want to get out of here?"